Welcome to the Dream Power Show, where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debi Spector-Weissman.
Welcome to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, Debi Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. We speak a lot on this program about the ways we hold ourselves back from achieving our dream lives. But did you ever stop to consider that maybe you're not getting what you want because of that lover who cheated on you 5 years ago? Or maybe your former best friend who posted your deep, darkest secrets on social media? Or maybe it was that coworker who sabotaged your plans for getting the promotion you felt you richly deserved. Well, there's a name for this: Post Betrayal Syndrome. And it can have devastating impacts on your health, your relationships, and your work. We're going to discuss what this is and what you can do about it with transformational psychologist Dr. Debi Silber. She's an award-winning speaker who helps people move past their betrayals, and she's the author of several books, including her latest, Trust Again: Overcoming Betrayal and Regaining Health, Confidence, and Happiness. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Debi.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, me too. Well, Debi, we've always taught to believe that time heals all wounds, but your studies show that that's not true. So how does betrayal keep us stuck?
You know, it's one of those things. It's interesting because there are so many different types of trauma: death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, devastation of some kind. And betrayal is a very unique type of trauma. And I just to back up, I did a study on, first of all, you don't study something like betrayal unless you have to. So I had my own betrayals, launched me into this PhD program in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential, because I was changing it so much, I didn't quite understand it. Anyway, I was there, I did a study on betrayal, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed everything. But to answer your question, one of the discoveries was there's actually this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's known as post-betrayal syndrome. We've had easily over 25,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. And to answer your question, we've all heard time heals all wounds, and I have the proof that's not the case, because people, there's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? People write things like, my betrayal happened 40 years ago, and I can still feel the hate. My betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust again. My betrayal happened 10 years ago, feels like it happened yesterday. So we know when it comes to betrayal, we need a very specific protocol.
Okay, so you said that there are symptoms that are define this. So what are those symptoms?
Yeah. So every few months I pull the stats just to see where people land. So we've had every age represented, almost every country represented. So pulled the latest stats for you. Ready? 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers, and those triggers can take you down. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% struggle with their sleep. 63% have extreme fatigue. That's your adrenals. Those are your adrenals crashing. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues. That's anything from Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. These are the most common mental symptoms. 78% are overwhelmed. 70% walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% are unable to focus. 64% are in shock. 62% are unable to concentrate. So now just imagine you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, and you're still supposed to raise your kids and do your work and show up, right? That's not even the emotional ones. 88% have extreme sadness, and 83% are very angry. Now, if you've been angry and sad and you mix those together, that's exhausting right there. 82% feel hurt, 80% have anxiety, 79% are stressed. Here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. Ready? 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just reading that list, it exhausts me just hearing about it all. Uh,
Staggering, right?
it is. And interesting, you said that your own betrayal caused you to get into this line of work and line of study. So,
Yeah.
what happened to you?
Yeah. So, nobody says, hey, I think betrayal is a good topic to study, So it's actually my 30th year in business. And as life would morph and change, so would business. So I started in health and then mindset and then personal development and testing people for stress related symptoms and disorders. And then I had my own trauma. So first it was the betrayal of my family. And I thought I did the work to heal. But then a couple of years later, it happened again. And this time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through it, you're shocked, you're blindsided, you're devastated. Life as you've known it, has just come to a crashing halt. So I got him out of the house and I looked at those two experiences and I said, okay, well, what's similar to these two besides me? But I realized, my boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my own needs seriously. I was last on my list, which so many people do, right? And I see this with women in particular. So I was like, you know what? That's it. It was, I don't even know what came over me, but I was like, this is going to be the most drastic, bold move I could ever do. So here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. I was 50 and I'm like, we're going back for that PhD. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, how I was going to manage the time, but I intuitively knew, nothing changes if nothing changes. And it was in that drastic move everything changed. And, we can spot an unhealed betrayal from a mile away in health, in work, in relationships. And one of the classic ways I see it in relationships, I see it in one of 2 ways. The first way is repeat betrayals. If you have a repeat betrayal, it's an unhealed betrayal. You keep getting, it's like the faces change, but it's the same thing. There is it's not that it's your fault, but there's an opportunity. There's this profound lesson that is waiting to be learned. Until and unless you do, you will keep getting opportunities in the form of people to teach you this. And when you finally get it, that you are lovable, worthy, deserving, you need better boundaries in place, whatever it is for you, lesson learned. You don't have to repeat it again. Or of course we see the big wall goes up and they're like, nope, been there, done that. No one's getting near me again. And we think it's coming from a place of strength. It's not, it's coming from fear. So many ways an unhealed betrayal just follows us around until we face it, feel it, heal it.
A lot of times I found that people sort of wear it like a badge on their sleeve, like, they'll bring it up a lot or they'll talk about it and almost like they can't let it go. Why is it so hard to let it go?
Yeah, that's actually part of the second discovery. And this was that while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal, we're going to move through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even better about that is we now know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Tragically, most people out of the 5 stages move to stage 3 and stay there. And the demographic you're speaking about is locked in that stage 3.
What are the 5 stages? So
yeah. I mean, when this was discovered, in like the geekiest way, I thought my head was going to fly right off my body. I mean, this was so exciting because now there's a roadmap. If someone is willingness is the key word right here. If someone is willing to do what it takes, they will predictably move from one stage to the next. So now truly staying stuck is a choice. Anyway, so the 5 stages, that's what we teach within the Institute. It's all mapped out in Trust Again, but I'll give you the distilled version. Ready? The first stage is like a setup stage. And I saw this with every study participant, me too. If you imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, and kind of neglecting and ignoring the emotional and the spiritual. So what does that look like? Looks like we're really good at thinking and doing, and not really prioritizing the feeling and being. Anyway, if you only have 2 legs of a table, easy for that table to topple over, that's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest of all of the stages. And this is shock, D-Day, discovery day. And this is like where the person takes a mask off and says, this is who I've been this whole time. It's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. You've just ignited the stress response. You are headed now for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. This makes no sense. You can't even understand what you just learned. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. It's the rules that you have. It's what prevents chaos. Don't go there, trust this person. This is how life works, And in a moment, it's all totally shattered. The bottom is bottomed out on you. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So it's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything and everything you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Who can I trust? Where do I go? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap though. Once we've figured out how to survive, we're like, okay, all right, I got this. And because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where we just came from, we think it's good. So we start planting roots here because we have no idea there's a stage 4 or stage 5. We think this is the end of the road.
So what happens with stage 4 and 5?
Yeah. So stage 3, that is that stage we can get stuck in if we're not careful for life. Anyway, if we're willing to give up all of those benefits we were getting, grieve, mourn the loss, a few things we need to do, we can move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge and you accept, I can undo my betrayal, but I can control what I do with it. And I always use the example of if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, your stuff isn't all there yet. It's not quite cozy yet, but you know it's going to be okay. When you're in this mental space, you start turning down the stress response. So you're not physically healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage you were causing in stages 2 and stage 3. And what's so interesting about stage 4 also is if you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be when you're in that new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, or that misery loves company crowd you picked up in stage 3, you don't take them with you to stage 4. You've just outgrown them. And people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation and you've just outgrown them. If they can't rise up, they're gone. When you're in this space, you're making it cozy. You're making it mentally, okay. You move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal, self-love, self-care, eating well, exercising, things like that. You didn't have the bandwidth for any of that earlier. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules, new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. And you have a new worldview based on what you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was just the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
That is an amazing discovery. But tell me this. So somebody's living their life and maybe they had a betrayal a while ago and they're in this stage 3 and they're stuck and they're living their life and they know something's maybe not right, but are not sure it is. How do they know that they're actually suffering from post-betrayal syndrome?
Yeah, well, first of all, if they have any of the symptoms that I mentioned, there you go. If they're numbing, avoiding, distracting, that's another way you know. If there's that sense of unease, if they don't feel good, see what happens is, and if you want me to explain the 3rd discovery, you'll see. Because when you're in a place of post-betrayal transformation, you're not stuck in stage 3. That was the 3rd discovery.
I just have time for one final question, which is how can people find out more about you and your work?
Thank you so much. I really recommend everybody take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. They could just find that at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com/quiz.
We've been talking about the impacts of betrayal with transformational psychologist, Dr. Debi Silber. We'll be right back with our next guest. How many times have you ever done this? You're watching TV and see a person who seems to have it all: money, success, great relationships, fame, skin to die for. And you say to yourself, that person's different from me. I can never do or be what they are. That's been your reaction. You're not alone. Truth be told, I felt that way myself in the past. But here's their little secret. They are no different from you. Yes, they may have more money or success now, but their DNA is no different from yours. And with a little insight, you could achieve your own success and live the life of your dreams as well. How? Well, my guest, international best-selling author and speaker Robert Riopel, has studied what makes people successful, and he's going to share his findings with us. Robert is the author of the award-winning book, Success Left a Clue, and he's trained hundreds of thousands around the world in the art of living successful lives. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Robert.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm feeling so happy to be here and blessed to be here to share this time with you and your audience.
Oh, thank you. Well, Robert, so why is it that someone who maybe isn't the smartest or the most talented can wind up being very successful?
Well, the short answer is comes down to passion and being willing to take action. But also, someone can have less information, less knowledge, less experience than you. But if they position themselves as an authority, all of a sudden people go, oh, they're the authority. They are the one I want to go to. And so that's all what it really comes down to is how are you viewed by others? Are you chasing your clients or are your clients chasing you? And which one of those scenarios would you rather be in, Debbie?
Oh, most definitely. I totally understand that. But let me ask you this. Do you think people choose not to be successful?
Absolutely. And they don't even realize it's subconscious. And I love that you talk about dream power because it's the quality of our dreams and whether we actually put energy behind them or not, believe them to be real for us or not, that can dictate whether we move forward, hold ourselves where we are, or actually move back. So yeah, there's people that they don't even realize that subconsciously they may say, hey, I want more. I want to have better relationships, better health, better more money, all of that success, but yet they're battling that internal subconscious that's going, no, 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 you don't want to do that. That's a little too tough. That's for someone else. And so there is always that internal struggle going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, in dream work, when we all always talk about, understanding our dreams, I always say that, a dream is just a nice story to tell yourself unless you take action. And you think that the lack of taking action is like the most important thing that holds people back?
Without a doubt. In my book, Success Left a Clue, where I lay out 6 steps to create the life of your dreams. Step 1 is to dream big, because most people, and I love what a friend of mine and mentor, Les Brown, says. He says, the problem isn't that we set our dreams and goals too high and we miss them. The issue is we set them too low and we hit them. And that keeps us playing mediocre. But step number 3 is to take action, because in all my travels around the world, sharing the stage with some of the greatest thought leaders on this planet and meeting a lot of successful people and non-successful people, probably the biggest difference I've noticed between them, what separates them, is the action versus lack of action. So yeah, you've got to take action to move forward. Otherwise, you're going to just stay stagnant. And people go, well, Robert, I'm okay. I don't need to take action. I'm doing fine. Yeah, but the world's always changing. So if you're not continually taking action, you're actually going backwards, which is a big thing to understand.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I want to go back to what you said earlier about not setting our dreams or dreaming high enough. How do you know? If you're saying that, if you have it in your head, let's just say, for example, you're working for somebody and you want to go out on your own and start your own business. How do you know that what you say you want to do really isn't aiming high enough?
Well, here's kind of a litmus test I'll use. If my mind, when I set a dream and my mind goes, oh, that's possible, then I know I'm not dreaming big enough. I was doing a clubhouse with some friends earlier this morning, and a person came on and he had this dream. He says, it's so big and I don't even know how I'm going to get there, but it just feels right. And all of us are like, then you're on the right track. Because if it's so big that you don't even know how to do it, and that's what holds a lot of people back, is their mind goes, but I've got to be realistic. Who am I? I've been told all my life I don't have the right education or the right skills. And all these things hold us back. But if that dream, A, you don't know how you're going to do it, B, it scares the crap out of you, and C, it excites you, then you know you're on the right track, is the way I look at it. But if you look at it and you go, yeah, that'll be okay, I think I can do it, you're not going high enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, that reminds me just that whole idea of staying inside your comfort zone and being afraid to take that step outside your comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what people have to understand about their mind, is that your mind is actually set up for one thing, and that is to keep you right where you are, to protect you, keep you inside that comfort zone. And so people think their mind is there to give them success, but it's not. It's there to keep them the same. And there's a saying that says, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Well, to the mind, that's probably one of the most important statements, because if there's anything that the mind is going, oh no, that's different, all of a sudden it'll be like, no. And your mind will actually stop you in so many amazing ways. It could be in the dreams that you're having. It could be where it's yelling at, this is dangerous, but it could be a slight little whisper going, you say you want that, but do you really, is it that important? Last time you tried that, it didn't work. And look at what your family thought of you. So do you want to go through that again? And your mind knows you better than you know yourself. So again, it's getting out of here, getting out of your head, getting down to your heart and just saying, does this feel right for me? And what I love to teach people is, if you ever have a question you want to know the answer to, ask your heart. Because when you quiet your mind, you come to your heart. And we could go into the science that how your heart actually is shown to have more of the same cells that your brain does for making decisions. And that's why, following your heart's so important. But when you ask your heart, it'll only ever answer one of two ways, Debbie. It'll either answer yes, or it'll answer no. And the secret that I've learned is, when I ask my heart a question that I truly want to know the answer to, if it answers yes, I'm going to trust it, I'm going to follow it, and I'm not going to second guess it. If it answers no, I'm going to trust it, I'm going to follow it, and I'm not going to second guess it. But Robert, what if I make the wrong decision? Then you learn something from it, and you readjust, and you go again. But you're the one that decides whether you stop going for your dreams or not. You're the one that decides to quit or to go on. And that's the key.
And, you just said something too about, I think so many people are afraid to make mistakes, so they don't even take that step, because you can fall flat on your face. But how many people do we now know of who we call successes, who've had failure after failure after failure, and then like the fifth or sixth time they did it, that's when they got the success. But they knew to get up and try again.
Yeah, and look at Edison, I believe it was, who invented the light bulb. Someone said, you failed 10,000 times. He said, no, I didn't. I learned 10,000 ways not to do the light bulb. And he still came up with the invention. And over the last few years, a mentor of mine rephrased the word failure for me. And I love what he said there. He said, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. Because when something doesn't work, that's where some of the greatest lessons in life come from. And so if you look at it as a failure, then you're going to crush your dreams. You're going to hold yourself back. But if you sit there and go, okay, it didn't work. And 3 questions I'm always asking myself, Debbie, is this: whenever myself or with a team, I'm doing work, we go through a process, we go through whatever it is we're doing, then we sit down and we debrief and we say, what worked? And with no emotional attachment, no happiness, grumpiness, or anything, we just put a list. This worked, this worked, this worked, this worked, this worked. Perfect. What did not work? And again, no energy around it, no ego, no, it was your fault, no, it was yours. It's just this and this and this and this did not work. Great. Now, what can we do different? And from what didn't work, we make the adjustments and we say, okay, now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. And the more important thing is, then we do it again. We take that action. And that's how you get to where you want to go. But if you sit there and go, well, this didn't work, I'm done. You're right, you're done. And I love how Robert Kiyosaki says, he says, there's always time to quit. So do it later. Do it later, because you could always quit.
You quit when you're gotten the success and then look back on it.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. When you're sitting there going, wow, the book that was written so many years ago, I can't remember the author, but 3 Feet from Gold. How many people stop right when they're about to strike it rich? And I want to be clear to your audience, when I'm talking wealth, I'm talking rich, Debbie. I'm a very big believer that we are holistic beings. So it's not just the financial. I'm talking wealthy in your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, your physical, and your financial. You can have wealth in all those areas, and it's important to have wealth, because I love what my wife says, how she signs her emails. Without health, what is wealth? And we know from our journey together and the health issues we've gone through, that you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your health, you're poor. You're poor. If you don't have great relationships, you're poor. So it's about having that balance in all areas.
Right. It's I think the people who just look at success in how much money's in their bank account and discount everything else are the ones who really aren't successful.
That's right. Yeah. And as an example, I said this before the recording started. Where am I right now? I'm in my RV. I've got my 6 cats, believe it or not. I've got 6 cats in the RV with us traveling, and our pet pig, all 265 pounds of her. She's actually about 10 feet away from me in her bed, because she doesn't wake up before noon. If you wake her up before noon, she's a grumpy girl. So one of the things we do to balance ourselves and create wealth in that is on our calendar before we schedule anything else. We put down what we call our balance pieces: time together, time with our family, time for our health, time for ourselves, because people don't realize, and this is why a lot of people's dreams don't manifest for them, that I've realized, Debbie, is they forget to take time for themselves. And you cannot give what you don't have. So if you don't rejuvenate you, how can you give to other people? And in finances, they say the golden rule: pay yourself first. Well, if you're going to pay yourself money first, why wouldn't you pay yourself in time first for you and your family and what's important? And because we put that on our calendar first, I can mix in as much business as I want without feeling guilty, because I've got quality time. Quality versus quantity is another big thing. I've got quality time with friends and family. As soon as we're done this interview, I'm in my bathing suit, I'm out on the river, and we're soaking for the rest of the day in the sun. And I'm going to read. I love reading, so I'm going to go in the water for a little bit, and then I'm going to read for a couple hours. And I'm just going to love it and soak it up. That's the wealth in all areas. And that's how you go for your dreams. You make sure you take care of all the important things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very well said. Right at the beginning, you were talking about, there's 6 ways that we can create success in our lives. And you talked about, the dreams and the other things. So what else can you add to that?
Yeah. So step number 1, dream big. And I'm a huge believer in vision boards. And I love, again, I'm always learning myself. A friend who I just met over the last year because of the, what's going on in the world, she ended up teaching me the difference between, I used to talk about doing dream boards, and I love dream boards. And she said, well, Robert, you realize a dream is just a theory. But if you have a vision, that's dream plus action mixed together. She goes, so I love to do vision boards. Instant paradigm shifts for me, just like that. So I now rename all my boards vision boards. So dreaming big. And people go, well, Robert, what if your dreams don't come true? What if what you say, how are you going to feel? And I go, you know what? A huge portion of them haven't come true yet, but I'm still way ahead of the people that don't set any at all. Right. So I'm big about dreaming big and get them on your vision board.
How can people find out more about you and what you do?
One of the things I love to do is the greatest way to stay connected and find out more is my international best-selling book, Success Left a Clue. Is your audience can actually go to robertriopel.com, just my name, robertriopel.com, and they can actually download the digital copy of the book as our gift to them for having me on your podcast. But it does come, I will let you know, it does come with a caveat. And the caveat is this: I didn't write the book for them to read it and put it on the shelf and make it shelf help. I wrote it, remember step number 3, take action. So I wrote it as a workbook. And all the way through, I have action steps where at the beginning of the chapter, I'll actually say, did you do the last action? If not, stop reading right now and go back and do that action. Because if they use it as a workbook, Debbie, and they actually do the 6 steps, they will see that they're able to go towards their dreams at a whole much better, quicker pace.
We've been speaking with author and developmental trainer, Robert Riopel. We'll be right back with our next guest. One of the things that interests me about dreams is if there's a difference in how they affect various types of people. For instance, in an earlier show, I spoke with a historian who studied the dreams of Civil War soldiers and their families. Today, we're going to explore the dreams of another specific group of people, women in prison. My guest, dream worker Carol Oschmann, took a look at their dreams and wrote about them in the award-winning book, Prison Dreams. And she's here to talk about it now. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Carol.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Well, Carol, what got you interested in studying the dreams of incarcerated women?
Our senior citizen community in Florida was, maybe 3-4 miles from a women's prison. And a lot of the ladies in my circle were going in and teaching classes on cooking or drawing or parenting or how to do a checkbook, all kinds of things, religion, of course. And I picked up the phone one day and called the chaplain and said, do you think they'd be interested in dreams? And she said, absolutely. I was in within 2 weeks.
So how many women did you speak to?
Overall, well, I tried to limit it to 15, and there were 5 compounds, and she was going to choose 3 from each. But that first night there was over 20.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'm going to say, did they volunteer, or were they just selected? Were they people who knew in advance, or that you knew who were already dreamers or remembered their dreams?
I did not know any of them, and a lot of them were just had an interest, had dreams, and wanted to know what it was about. Some were sent by the guards because they would scream all night and keep everybody awake, made everybody's life miserable.
Mm.
Oh.
So when you met with them and talked with them about their dreams, did you interpret them for them, or did they figure it out themselves? How did that work?
We had a blackboard, and I showed them how to do it themselves. We'd put as much of the dream as I could capture on the blackboard, and then I'd show them how to circle the nouns and the action and take it off to the side and do free thinking, and something would click.
And did you talk to each one of them about their dreams?
Many of them. There were so many I couldn't remember. The one that stood out in my mind was this lady who was going to be released probably the next week. And she had this dream where she went into a morgue and had to identify her boyfriend's dead body. And she went in, and there's this body on the drawer, and his mother was standing in the corner going crazy, as you imagine you might be in that situation. And she pulled back the sheet. Yep, that's him. She covered him back up. No emotion, she said. She started to leave, and she was drawn to another drawer. She pulls it out, and there's a baby. And this baby was sitting up and clapping and playing and having a grand old time. She left the room, and then she got the puzzling over it, and she went back in, and there sits her supposedly dead boyfriend sitting up playing with the baby. And she said to me, now don't tell me I'm going back and have a baby with that so-and-so. She said, no way. And so, well, we have to look at the different words in there. The baby is a new life. The dead boyfriend, he's part of you. And he's a part of you that's long been dead. I said, this old lady thinks of the male energy as someone who's going to put the bread on my table and the roof over my head. I said, pardon me, you might think of it another way. I said, but this baby is a new life, and it's not really a new life because he's sitting up and playing. So I think it's a talent you have or something you're supposed to be doing that you know about, but you haven't pursued. And all the ladies in the room yelled out, your music. It seems she'd been entertaining them there at, in the prison. And we talked about what she could do with her music. I said, even no matter what job you have, find a way to use your music. Go to a church, sing in a choir. You can sing at weddings. There must be some way you can use your music. You open a door for God to step in and give you more. The chaplain called me later that week, and she said many lives were changed that night. But the power of the dream.
So tell me who else was affected in that first night?
Well, I can't tell you that first night. There were just so many. But mind you, I've met with them for 3 years, and they were supposed to be 16-week classes, and then I'd get a new group. So I talked to a lot of women.
Any common themes that ran among their dreams?
Surprisingly, no. But talking about changing your life, I had one young lady, she had to have been in her early 20s, and she was so pretty and little and dainty. And she said she had a dream that she was flying over a sea of snakes, and they were yellow and brown. And I said, well, off the top of my head, yellow to me is joy. And there again, the women all knew her, and they shouted out, her name is Joy. And she come back a couple weeks later where she had I told her that the snakes, I felt a little bit on shaky ground here, but I had to tell it like I saw it. I said, the snakes are what you think of this prison population, and you are among them. The yellow Joy is mixed up with the other snakes. And they all shouted out, yeah, you got that one right. But when I taught them to put it on, how to interpret by putting it on the board and writing it, they got to be very vocal. They come up with a lot of good ideas themselves, possibilities of what it might mean. And as you know, the dreamer is the only one who knows the truth. Mm-hmm. You can't tell anyone what their dream means. It has to go, aha, inside them. And a few weeks later, she had a dream of going up in a big old house to the attic, and there were a chest of drawers. And she just looked at it, and she turned around and left. Well, I told her that try to go back. I told her how to go back into that dream, and go to that chest of drawers and open up one of the drawers, because there's opportunities for you there. So the next week she come back, she was able to do it. And what she found in that chest of drawers were prison pants, not the tops, just the bottoms. They were blue with a white stripe down the side, and they were very beautiful material. They were velvety. And so I told her I thought something good was going to come out of this prison experience because of it being the nice material. And the next week, she said, I know what that dream meant. She said that the prison guards came to her during that week. The person who was in charge of the wastewater facility, the inmate, had been released. And they asked her if she would do it. And she had the right to say no. She thought about it, and she thought, getting her the wastewater, the toilet water and all that, it wasn't for her, but because she'd opened those drawers and discovered something beautiful inside the prison life, she said yes, she would do it. Well, the other women were just so thrilled for her. They started yelling out things like a job on the outside, benefits. You don't have to rely on a man to provide your living. And that was very, very encouraging for both her and I that she saw that.
So they're actually life-changing results as a result of them paying attention to their dreams.
Oh, yes, yes. One lady had an addiction problem, evidently. I wasn't allowed to ask them anything about their personal lives, but it would come out. She dreamt that she was sitting in a chair with a table in front of her. It had a big emerald green ashtray in front of her, and it was full of roaches. What are roaches? She said they're marijuana butts. And she was picking them out of the ashtray and putting them into a brown paper bag. And walking up to her is this man she knew, who she hated. He was the bully of the neighborhood. Nobody liked him. And she said he wanted all the marijuana butts. So she gave them to him. And last she saw was the back of him walking away from her and this bag of butts in his hand. Well, that one was kind of easy for me. I said, everything in your dream is you. The drugs are you. This man you hate is part of you that you hate. And he's walking away. He's taking what makes you unhappy with yourself. He's taking that and he's walking away. To me, that's saying your drug addiction is over. You don't have to go back there anymore.
And were you able to find out if she was able to get rid of her addiction?
Oh yeah, she went on. Some of them kept coming back, even though they weren't scheduled to come back in later classes, and she was one of them. And next dream she brought in, she was had taken some friends to the beach, and they were like knee high in water, and she noticed a shark swimming nearby, and she wanted to warn them, and she swishes the water and scares the shark, and the shark stands up on his tail fins and just goes back and forth and stands up there. Well, she said to the shark, he was toothless, he was wrinkled, he was old, and she saw he was harmless. And he said to her, well, why don't you come home with me? My wife would like to meet you. I found out later she was gay. They all knew that. And that was pretty funny that the shark's wife wanted to meet her. So I was trying to analyze it, and I told her, you must think of yourself somewhat as a shark. Do you bully people? And she admitted she did. She was one who, if they're standing in line waiting to go somewhere and they're supposed to be absolutely quiet, she'd bark in the ear of the one in front of her and made a lot of enemies. But she was always pulling pranks like that. She was a joker at the same time. But that's how she saw herself at that point, was old and wrinkled and no longer shark material, toothless. She'd lost her power. About a year later, she met me at the gate as I was coming in. She was so excited because she'd had a dream where she was walking the beach and she was picking up shark's teeth. So in other words, she was getting her power back.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
I have a website. It's caroloschmann.com, and my books are all there, including Prison Dreams.
We've been speaking about the dreams of women in prison with Carol Oschmann. We'll be right back. How did you handle the last crisis in your life? Did you crumble up like a paper bag and curse the world and everyone in it? Or did you find the steel in your spine and rise to the occasion? Or perhaps it was just a situation, reaction, somewhere in between. You notice I said the last crisis, because the sad truth is that life is not all sunshine and chocolate chip cookies. There are times in our lives when the unexpected incident throws us for a loop, or when we're faced with having to make this unpleasant decision we'd rather not have to make. There was a time in my life when I would have been one of those people who used the bad experience as an opportunity to confirm my membership in the victimhood club. I've spent years working to erase my feelings of being out of control with life and developing the tools I need to ground myself when I feel uncertainty creeping in, and to learn how not to let my emotions rule me. So what happened to me got me thinking that it also creates an opportunity to help anyone else who might need help in handling a chaotic situation. So I'm hoping that by telling you my story and how I managed my reactions to what was going on around me, I can help you turn your awful situation into something manageable. So here goes my tips on how not to let the unexpected overwhelm you. Tip number 1, breathe. That might sound silly, telling you to breathe. I mean, we breathe all the time, right? I'm talking about being conscious of your breath and using it to help you get and stay grounded. And here's why. When you're in the midst of turmoil, your body goes through a physical reaction. You may experience your heart racing a mile a minute. You may have stomach pangs, body aches, body flushes, brain fog, shock. Whatever it is, it's at least at that moment, you can't think clearly. In fact, your emotions might be taking center stage and cause you to act out or say something you might regret later on. So the first thing you need to do is to ground yourself. And the best way I know how to do this is to focus on breath. Tip number 2. The next step was to engage in what I would call good, bad self-talk. Usually, I'd never recommend self-talk, as most of the time it's negative and doesn't serve a purpose. But when you're in the thick of things, you're building up lots of negative emotions, and they have to have some place to go. You don't want to express them out loud. In my case, for instance, to the flight attendant. In your case, you wouldn't want to express your emotions at that moment to your spouse, child, boss, police officer, the guy who tried to run you off the road. That would only make a bad situation worse, and even possibly raise it to higher and even destructive levels. The second worst thing you could do at that point is to either pretend your feelings don't exist or to try to repress them altogether. By not acknowledging your negative emotions, you set yourself up for seeing yourself as a victim. In truth, you may be being victimized, but you have to let yourself feel that way. Yes, something bad and upsetting has happened, but if you hold it in, that feeling of upset can morph into you're saying to yourself, I'm angry, and then spiral downward to I'm outraged, and then go on to asking these questions. Why did this happen to me? Or why do bad things always happen to me? And even down to, I deserve to have bad things happen to me. But by talking out your emotions, you're grounding yourself and helping you from forgetting how resourceful and powerful you really are. So start off by telling yourself, yes, how unfair this situation is, how angry, upset, sad, fearful, anxious, or any other negative feeling is inside you. Acknowledge that feeling. Really acknowledge it. And then let it go. You may have to do this and return to it at a later time to really shed all of those disempowering thoughts. But in the moment, this kind of self-talk can diffuse the upset in your mind. And yes, help you take a more dispassionate view at what is really going on. Tip number 3, don't be afraid to ask for help. This was a hard lesson for me to learn in my life in general. And this situation was an opportunity to put it into practice. For most of my life, I hated asking anyone for help. I think I was afraid the answer would be no. And that really kept me from reaching out to people for a very long time, even when it would have done me good. But in the years I've learned how to ask for help, I've discovered something wonderful. Most people actually want to help, and that the act of helping makes them feel good. By not asking for help, I was denying them the chance to feel better about themselves. When you ask for help, not only do other people rise to the occasion, but they may also offer advice that you may not have thought of that can help you in your crisis moment. Tip number 4, create a new story. If what's happening to you is not serving you, find a way to make the best of the situation. In our journey, my husband and I found ourselves stuck at an airport for nearly a day. Believe me, if you've ever found yourself having to deal with a flight delay with little information about when it will end, you're far from your happy place. You're surrounded by dozens, if not hundreds of other passengers equally inconvenienced, and the air of frustration and gloomy moods is literally contagious. That's where I was. But rather than give in to that collective mass of negative energy, I told myself I could reframe the way I looked at the situation. I kept telling myself, what a great story this would make. The type of story I could laugh at in time. The type of story that would make good party conversation for months to come. Mind you, this didn't change any of the details about what was happening in the moment, but it did help make the situation feel less like a prison sentence and more like a unique adventure. As the day went on and things got weirder and weirder, it also helped keep things in perspective. None of this was my doing, and it would all pass in time. Tip number 5, express yourself. Having someone to share in the experience, in this case, my husband, helped keep both of us in good spirits. It was good to have someone who was aware of the absurdity of it all, and talking about our feelings with each other kept those negative emotions from overwhelming us. If you're having to deal with a chaotic situation on your own, see if there's someone you can reach out to, either by phone or text, or in the case of a collective situation, like in an airport, by striking up a conversation with a nearby person. A shared experience is always easier to deal with than one where you have to take on the entire burden. Tip number 6, don't forget to move. Doing something physical can also help clear your mind by having something else to focus on. While in our case, walking around the airport terminal was not as strenuous as doing a workout, there were enough endorphins released to help create a feeling of well-being. There were too many people around us to do other movements like dancing or simply shaking our bodies around. But if you're in a situation where you're by yourself, consider movement of any kind to help you cope with your situation. Tip number 7, fake it till you make it. There were times during all the events that didn't go the way I wanted them to go when we had to interact with others. While deep inside, I would have preferred to find a nice hole to crawl in. That was both unrealistic and an example of negative thinking. So I forced myself not to go there. Instead, I approached everyone I faced with a smile, regardless of what I'd been feeling at the time. This had a double effect. Forcing a smile actually raised my energy level and made me feel happier. Score 1 for smiles. And the effect it has on those around me and around you, if you smile when you don't feel like it, that effect is incalculable. In the case of the airline personnel we met, who were clearly overworked and stressed out themselves, smile was like money to them. On the day in question, nearly every flight was running late, and these people had to deal with scores of passengers, each one angrier than the last. I'm sure they appreciated my smiling face and the smiling face of my husband and the polite tone of our voices. And seeing their smiles in return helped make our own experience a little more bearable as well. Tip number 8, don't let the secondary emotions get to you. If your situation, like ours, lasts for hours on end, these coping mechanisms may start to wear thin. In my case, new negative thoughts started to creep in. I replayed the original incident on the airplane in my head. As I remembered the eyes of all the passengers on the plane that had already been running late, mind you, when I saw them looking at me, a feeling of shame came over me. I imagined all those people hating me for making their flight that much longer. I knew I had to let go of that feeling before it festered, so I quickly acknowledged it. I realized I was starting to create a story around it, a story that wasn't true, that all of it had been my fault, which it hadn't. And so I did what I had to do. I let it go. I created a new story. I did another round of yoga breaths to steady me, and then I was able to go on. Your secondary emotions might be different depending on your situation, but the end result is the same. Focusing on those emotions will leave you in a funk if you don't utilize these methods for acknowledging them and then releasing these emotions. Tip number 9, visualization. If you have a little time during your crisis, doing a visualization exercise can help you cope with your situation. Tip number 10, sometimes bad is good. Last year, when I had a dark moment in another time of crisis, I got this message. Whether I'd heard it elsewhere or came up with it myself, I'm not sure. But it served me well as a reminder of that old cliche, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. And it's this: the dark night of the soul is the dawn of a new creation. Throughout time, there have been stories after stories of breakthroughs in life, coming after total breakdowns. I've seen it in personal growth, in the stories of the creations of inventions or works of art, or new business ventures, all coming as a result of the personal reflection and inward contemplation following what others might call a disaster. It is my sincere hope that life is all rainbows and unicorns for you. But when you're least expecting it and life throws you a curveball, remember you don't have to let it define you. Reach into your inner strengths so you don't let your emotions rule over you and make you do something you might regret later. Use some of the tools I've given you here to help you stay in control of yourself and conquer whatever crisis might befall you. Well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.